Today we're going to take a look at another just works GNU Linux distro called Zorin OS. They recently released version 16 back in August, and this is a distribution whose ease of use and appearance is supposed to mimic that of Windows or macOS, so it should be a really good option for people who are new to Linux and switching from one of those operating systems. Now, if we go to the download page, you can see that they actually want us to pay $39 to download Zorin OS 16 Pro Edition. This is the first version that they show us, so obviously this is the one that they really recommend us to download. Now, you don't have to pay for this if you don't want to. There is Zorin OS 16 Core and Zorin OS 15.3 Lite that is available, and both are free to download if you don't want to pay for anything. Now, if we compare the versions, we can see that with the Pro, we get the so-called premium desktop layouts that look like the macOS, Windows 11, and Classic. I wonder which version of Windows they're referring to as Classic, because if it's Windows 10, that makes me feel really old. I was like, I think a senior in high school when Windows 10 came out. And then you can also make it look like Ubuntu. And you also get the professional grade creative suite of apps. So makes it sound like there's a lot of apps that are pre-installed. Same thing with advanced productivity software. There's additional artwork, so I guess some extra wallpapers. And you also get Zorin installation support. So you get a little bit of technical support with the Pro Edition as well. Now, I'm sure that a lot of the Linux veterans out there are probably considering all of this to be bloat and unnecessary, from the professional grade creative suite of apps, the advanced productivity software, and again, if you're a bit more of a seasoned Linux user, like if you can install Arch or Gentoo without any problems, the Zorin installation support probably isn't going to be that good for you either. But ultimately, this is something that's more marketed at Linux beginners. So just keep that in mind when we're taking a look at this OS. Now, even though Zorin wants us to pay $39 just to download the ISO, it is possible to get a copy of the Zorin OS 16 Pro ISO for free if you just visit your friendly neighborhood pirate ship. So as you can see, it is a 4.7 gigabyte Linux ISO, so pretty big as far as Linux distributions go, but you could have probably figured that out already just by looking at some of the descriptions. So I'm going to go ahead and install this in a VM, and let's see if it's really worth the $39. So this is the screen that we get when we first try booting up Zorin OS. As you can see, all of the options are to try or install it. Basically, it's going to boot you into the live environment, besides the power off option, of course. But we do have some differences here. We can do it with, I'm guessing both of these are safe graphics, or this is just whatever the default is, safe graphics, and then you have the option of booting it with the modern NVIDIA drivers. So this is a really good option that I like to see in the Just Works distros, because the NVIDIA drivers, if you're using a computer that needs NVIDIA drivers and you're trying to install Linux on it, that is probably one of the great filters for GNU Linux. NVIDIA really doesn't offer a lot of support for GNU Linux. They do make a driver for it, but they kind of just fart it out and say, here, you're on your own for installing it. And yeah, it can be a real struggle getting that working on your GNU Linux distro. So I'm glad that Zorin at least tries to offer a little bit of help on their end. But my VM is not going to be using NVIDIA drivers, so we'll just check it out normally. And this is a really interesting startup that they have here. This actually looks a lot like the checking screen that happens when you're starting up Windows. I believe Windows 7, but I think Windows 10 also had a screen like this whenever it's recovering from some kind of problem or you're running disk checks on it. So that's pretty cool. They're getting a lot of the fine details of that aesthetic. And that's also a pretty nice looking boot up animation. All right, so our desktop is loading now, and this background looks a lot like Alpine Linux, doesn't it? I think this might actually be the same image. that Alpine Linux uses. All right, so here's the screen where we can either try Zorin OS or install it, because like most Linux distros, you can just run it in a live environment, but we'll go ahead and install Zorin OS. So choose your keyboard layout. It's already on English US, so nothing extra I need to do there. And what kind of installation do we want to do? So there's a normal install, which is going to do your web browser, utilities, office software, games, and media player. And then there's a minimal install, which is just web browser and basic utility. We'll do normal, because I'm sure that's what most new users are going to do. And then, of course, we have the option to download updates while installing Zorin OS. Checked by default. Install third-party software for graphics and Wi-Fi and additional media formats. Checked by default. Then we have this, don't participate in the census. So the census lets Zorin OS developers count the number of users anonymously. So this is some sort of telemetry to, and not necessarily spy on people, but to just get a little bit of usage and statistics about the people out there that are using Zorin OS. I'm not really happy about this being an opt-out. Like, it should be something that you have to actually choose to opt into. So no, I'm not going to participate. I think that the Zorin OS devs might be a little bit annoyed seeing that someone out there is running pro, but they don't have a payment record for it. So we'll go ahead and continue with the installation. And yeah, we'll erase the disk and install. Actually, let's look at advanced features. This give us an option to encrypt the home folder. It looks like we can just do full disk encryption. Okay, so they don't let you just encrypt the home folder like Linux Mint does. That's an option I wish they would add on. All right, and let's continue. So yeah, time zone's New York. That looks good. And then we'll go ahead and enter a username and a password. And what's this? It looks like there's an option to use Active Directory with Zorin OS. So not only does this look like it's being aimed at or created for the home users, the home users that are new to Linux, but it looks like they're also trying to try to market this to companies as well, because generally that's the type of settings that you would use Active Directory in, like small enterprises, small businesses, things like that. So that's interesting. I don't think I've seen that in a Linux setup before where they have this option here. Of course, you could do that in pretty much any distro, but obviously with Zorin OS, it's a just works distro, so they're trying to make it really easy on us. Okay, so let's go ahead and wait for this setup to finish. All right, so the installer is finished. It was a little bit slower than the Linux Mint or elementary OS setup, but then again, there are a whole lot of apps that are coming pre-installed with this. So we'll go ahead and restart into the distro and press enter. Then we get that nice boot up animation with the flashing Z. Getting some eye candy already. All right, and then we're here at our login screen. Go ahead and put in the password. All right, and here is the desktop. And by the way, I mean, we'll see once I get into the performance analysis, but I configured this VM to have 3 threads and 6 gigabytes of RAM. So it's sort of simulating, I guess, maybe a low-end to maybe mid-range PC, although I don't think I've ever even heard of a PC that has 3 threads. It's just, like a dual-core plus. All right, so we have this little tour that we can start when we boot it up. So yeah, they tell you down here, this is your application menu. So very similar to the start menu on Windows. You can choose how the desktop looks. So we see that this is sort of like a Mac OS setup. This is a Windows setup. And then this is an Ubuntu setup. And then speed up your virtual machine. So yeah, this is just because I'm in a VM. They want us to install guest editions for VirtualBox. That's actually pretty good detection to see that we're in a VM and say, hey, we're going to help you out and try to make it better. But I'm not going to do that because, I'm just testing this out for a few minutes. I'm probably not going to actually really use this distro. And then we can connect online accounts. You can link your phone to the computer with Zorin Connect. And then you can use software to install apps. So we'll launch software. So yeah, you don't have to use the terminal to install your software. Like with most of the JustWorks distros, they give you this nice little GUI front end. And oh, look at that. The editor's pick includes Valorin. So this is a like 3D sort of Minecraft-like game that is fully open source under a GPL license. So this is pretty cool. Yeah, fully free, fully Libre. I always like when games do that. Let's see what else they have. Office Suite. Oh, so we can, well, we have LibreOffice, but we can install only Office if we want instead. And that's supposed to be, I guess, more similar to the proprietary Microsoft Office suite. All right, and then let's go ahead and start looking at everything. And no, I'm not going to do the software update now. So of course, this is our application menu where everything's going to be. Now, I am using the Pro version. So there's going to be a lot additional apps in here that are not included with the Lite or the Core version. So let's see what we have here. We have Maps, and I'm guessing that this isn't Google Maps. Yeah, this is OpenStreetMaps, but pretty good app to include with the distro. Let's see what else we have. Clocks, File Manager. We have a password safe. I don't think I've ever used this particular application. I do use a password manager. I use KeePass XC. That's generally what I recommend to people to use. So let's see, is this some kind of a fork of KeePass? Okay, so just after doing a quick search, it looks like the main differences between password safe and KeePass is that there's more functionality sort of built in, because you can see like all of this browser configurations. Apparently password safe just has that, and then with KeePass, of course, you can integrate it with your browser, but you have to install plugins for it as well. It also looks like they support YubiKeys by default, and that's another thing that you have to like install a plugin, or you have to extend KeePass XC a bit to get that functionality. But either way, that's good that they're including a password manager by default, even though it's not a password manager that I prefer. I still prefer KeePass XC. So since we have the browser open, why don't we take a look at the version that we're running. So we're running version 91, which isn't the most up-to-date one. 92, Firefox 92 came out, I want to say maybe September 6th, like just over a week ago. But then again, there are updates available for this system that it gave me some notifications for. So I'm sure if I install those updates, it would give me Firefox 92. But this isn't a super old, outdated version. I mean, this is acceptable for booting the fresh ISO. Let's go through some more of the applications that come bundled with ZorinOS Pro. So under games, we've got Solitaire, we've got Mines, Sudoku. So kind of the same standard games that you would get with at least old Windows. Candy Crush isn't in here, but let's be honest, nobody actually plays Candy Crush. So that's a pretty cool bundle of games. Let's see, under Internet, we've got Transmission, so that's a pretty good torrenting client. And we've got Firefox, Feeds, and under Office, so we've got, of course, the LibreOffice suite. This is consistent across the other versions of Zorin OS as well. Maybe not the minimal one, or at least if you do like a minimal installation, it might not include these, but this isn't something that's just exclusive to Pro. Basically, the difference as far as apps with Pro and the other versions is that you get a lot more for content creation with Pro. Like if we go to sound and video, we have Audacity, we have Handbrake, we have Kdenlive Live, Mix, OBS Studio. So these are all content creation apps that are not going to come with the standard versions. Of course, you can install them. These are all free open source applications that you can just install from the like application store built into it. But you know, it tries to make it easier for you, I guess, in bundling all this under system tools. Let's see, so we can install additional drivers. This is probably for the NVIDIA drivers. Let's see what it tries to find. Oh, yeah, I'm in VirtualBox, so of course it's just going to find that stuff. But this would most likely be similar to that little drivers application that you have in Linux Mint, where you can manage different versions of the NVIDIA driver. So now let's do a little bit of benchmarking. Well, not really benchmarking, just trying to see how much resource usage is going on, because obviously this is a bit heavier than other Linux distros, but we really just want to make sure that it's lower in usage than Windows. So why don't we go to our disk usage analyzer. So you can see that I provisioned this with a 40 gigabyte hard drive, and we're using, or we have about 21 gigabytes available. So just about half of that. And this is perfectly fine if you're going to install it to a modern computer. I would think pretty much every modern laptop that you would get these days, even something that's made like 5 years ago, is going to have at least a 128 gigabyte solid state drive. So yeah, I mean, this is fine. This is also much better than Windows. I believe Windows uses about 30 or 40 gigabytes on your drive just with a clean installation. So yeah, this is slimmed down from Windows, but obviously a bit chunkier compared to other Linux distros. And why don't we get a resource monitor going as well? I thought I saw it in here. Yeah, system monitor. So we have Firefox open with 2 tabs. We've also got a Solitaire open. Why don't we get the classic Office setup, right? So we've got Solitaire, but we'll also open up Calc. You know, we can switch to that quickly in case the boss walks by and wonders what we're doing. And maybe we'll get Writer open as well. Okay, so we've got a few different apps up now. And let's see how our resource usage is going. So it looks like CPU-wise, we're idling around, I'm going to call that like between 10 and 20% for CPU usage across the 3 threads that I gave it. And for memory, it looks like we're using 2.3 gigabytes of RAM. So we're using less RAM than Windows does at idle. And as you saw, I have LibreOffice Writer open, LibreOffice Calc, I've got Solitaire, and Firefox with 2 tabs. So, as always that we see with Linux, it is lighter than Windows. And this is also not even the light version of Zorin OS that uses XFCE, because this is using the GNOME desktop, which tends to be a bit chunkier as far as desktop environments go. Not quite as chunky as KDE usually, but still, GNOME is bloat. That's what most people in the, I think, Linux community would consider it to be. So why don't we take a look at the appearance? Yeah, so this is another thing that we pay for, in air quotes, or pirated rather, are all these different themes. So let's see. This is, I guess, like a Windows Classic view. And then what is this one? Okay, so this is, I guess, more similar to like Windows 10, or not Windows 10, Windows 7, where it gives you sort of this short description about the app instead of just giving you the icon view. So this is more like the Windows 10, Windows 11 view. This is, I think, the Mac OS view, right? I think that's kind of how Mac OS looks. Yeah, where you have this little application menu. You can see everything. Oh, there's a weather app too. That's cool. I missed that. To-do list. Oh, and it also comes with VirtualBox pre-installed. But again, this VirtualBox, I'm pretty sure, is just the Pro Edition. On Lite, you're not going to get that. Blender, that's also a Pro Edition thing. Let's see. This should be more of an Ubuntu setup? No? No? The Ubuntu setup's not working? Or this, yeah, this is the Ubuntu setup. Or the Ubuntu setup, rather. I do prefer the Windows layout, though. This is always my favorite layout for using desktop environments, unless I'm using a window manager, but I like desktop environments. Some people call them bloat, but you know what? They're nice. You're not going to get everybody to use a tiling window manager and try to slim down their resource usage to like 128 gigs at idle. Let's see. We can do a dark theme. Oh, this is nice too. Yeah, this is a good looking dark theme. Like, it's not screwing up the text or anything like that. Yeah, this is nice. Nice and consistent. Let's see, interface. Oh, we can enable jelly mode. So yeah, so we get this little wibble wobble effect whenever we move our windows. And I think also, yeah, when you minimize them, they do that little slurp up animation. I don't really know what to call it. Ooh, this theme doesn't look very good in LibreOffice Calc, though. Yeah, that's not good. All right, let's see. Does it do it for the other Office apps? Let's try Writer. No, Writer pretty much looks fine. I mean, these tools here might be a little bit difficult for people to see, but yeah, that happens with dark themes in Linux sometimes. It's not just a Zorin OS thing. Why don't we disable the jelly mode? Because, yeah, that looks like it's a bit much. Icons on desktop. Oh, let's really make this look like Windows. So we'll do, like, mounted volumes. I don't have any mounted volumes. Let's do home. Let's do trash, and then we'll put the trash where it belongs in the lower right-hand corner, because that's where it should always be. If you put your trash can anywhere else on a Windows desktop, then sorry to say, but you're doing it wrong. So yeah, all in all, it's just another JustWorks distro. I will say that the theming is very on point to make it look like Windows. I would almost be curious to place a more novice computer user in front of this and maybe just change this icon to look like the little Windows flag or the little, whatever the icon looks like on Windows 10. Change that and then place somebody in front of this and see how long it takes them to realize that they're not actually using a Windows desktop. Maybe you can change the icon for Firefox as well to make it look like Microsoft Edge. But yeah, this is going to be pretty good for more novice computer users that are trying to switch out of Windows to Linux. As far as paying $39 for it, though, I don't know. I mean, the installation support might be worth it to a lot of people. Back when I worked at Geek Squad, $40 is about what we would charge somebody just to set up their desktop for them, which only included installing the OS, which, again, if you buy an OEM laptop, it's literally just like clicking next, next, next a bunch of times. Installing the updates or any other patches from the manufacturer, like firmware updates, things like that. And then we would also install up to 3 additional applications like Google Chrome, Dropbox, etc. And that's a service that many customers paid me for back when I worked at Geek Squad. So some people out there definitely see installation, setup support as worth it. However, I would think that if someone is so new to Linux that they need help installing it, they would also need additional help with using the OS going forward. So it would be good to see if Zorin can offer that for an additional cost as well. But all in all, I do think this is a pretty good distro. Let me know in the comments below. Have you used Zorin? Will you ever consider using Zorin? Or is it just another bloated Linux distro?